A local councillor who also sits on the Newcastle City Council Planning Committee has leaked to me a proposal that's currently being put together to move Grade 1 listed buildings Leazes Terrace forward about 70 or 80 metres into Leazes Park, roughly where I'm stood now. But what exactly are those proposals, and are they likely to get the nod when they're ready? It's coming up. Welcome back, it's Eddie here from Tyneside Life. So here I am stood in the beautiful Leazes Park, right next to St James's Park, next to the tennis court area here. So for 2 years now, since the PIF-led consortium bought Newcastle United, there's been intense speculation and debate as to what an expansion would look like, what the capacity might go to and how long it would all take. That was in light of comments made very early on by Mehrdad Gadusi and Amanda Staveley when they were initially interviewed and talked about expansion, but they didn't want to move away from St James's Park. In fact, they wouldn't be moving away, but they had desires to work with the local authorities to hopefully expand 60 to 65,000. Of course, with a city centre stadium like we've got, this cathedral on the hill, that comes with a whole boatload of significant complications, not least the Grade 1 listed buildings behind me here, behind the East Stand, Leazes Terrace, because that prevents the East Stand from being heightened any more than it is now because of light restrictions to the building, but also because it's a Grade 1 listed and of significant historical importance. The environmental impact of the building can't be compromised or encroached upon. And of course, we had the news 2 or 3 days ago that the Euros 2028 will be held in the UK and Ireland, and St James's Park is going to be one of the stadiums hosting some of those matches. So that brings up another question as to if and when expansion does happen, will it be ready? Will they start, and will it be ready in time for those Euros? So I might discuss a little bit about that as well. If you've been following my channel, you'll know by now that I don't jump on an article in the Chronicle or the Telegraph and produce a video based on the rhetoric of what somebody else has printed. I do my own research. For example, I found the lady who's the chair of the Friends of Leazes Park Committee, also a season ticket holder, and lives in Leazes Terrace. I found Cash Mumtaz, who owns St James's Terrace, and interviewed him. It wasn't the Chronicle who released that or revealed that information from him. It was me. And I spoke to the head of STAC just a couple of weeks ago, and he revealed to me about the timescale of the likely opening of STAC in Strawberry Place, which is going to be February to April. Now, what I didn't anticipate was the interim project of STAC going to be in Strawberry Place for 3 years. I was wrong about that, but I'm certain I'm not wrong about the bigger picture that I've described about the expansion of the Gallowgate and all the facilities behind it as and when it happens. As we know, there's currently ongoing a feasibility study being carried out by Newcastle United in relation to how they might expand St James's Park, taking into consideration the significant factors I've already mentioned. There'll be all sorts of really important stakeholders involved in that feasibility study, including architects and planners and the local authority and the council, environmental groups, English heritage, to name but a few. It's going to take a long time, going well into next year, to get the results. It'll be very expensive. So at the moment, nobody knows how much St James's Park can be expanded by. Even the owners, they don't know at the moment. So any figures that you see out there or here is pure speculation invented in somebody's imagination. Luke Edwards' article in the Daily Telegraph, if you read it, it says nothing that we don't already know. He talks about a capacity up to 65,000. He talks about a desire, I don't know where that information has come from, because it hasn't come from the club, to have a stadium that is completely equal on all 4 sides. Well, if it was, it would be more than 65,000 anyway. So nobody knows, but we all want the same thing. We all want an expanded St James's Park. We all want it to be expanded to as much as it possibly can, and we all want Newcastle fighting for trophies at the highest level. Now again, if you've been following my channel last year, a good year ago, I interviewed a lady called Marian Williams who lives at the back there in Leazes Terrace. She's also a season ticket holder for Newcastle United, passionate about the club. She is also Friends of the Leazes Park Committee here. And she was part and parcel of the group that blocked Sir John Hall from building a new stadium which straddled Castle Leazes and Leazes Park back in 1997. I interviewed her, fascinating lady. What I didn't tell you about her at the time, but she's also a local Labour councillor in Blakelaw, but she also sits on the Newcastle City Council Planning Committee. So very recently I had a brief conversation with Marian, who let out and told me that herself and various other stakeholders, including other residents, planners, etc., architects, are putting together, as we speak, a proposal that's completely independent of Newcastle United so far, a proposal to have Leazes Terrace moved, the whole building, into Leazes Park, where the tennis courts are here. And that would be done by demolishing the interior of the building and leaving only the facade, the outer wall, the old Georgian part of the building, the beautiful part, the most important part, which gives it its Grade 1 listed status. And then when we just have the facade left, they would somehow, in engineering terms, I don't know the detail, is either as one or in blocks, to move the facade into Leazes Park, get it all into position, and then build the interior again into whatever it's going to become. By way of an example, that construction behind me over my right shoulder is what used to be Carlisle House. Carlisle House, a building, an office building built in the 1920s, a Grade 2 listed building. It's part of the Pilgrims Quarter project here on Pilgrim Street, whereby approximately 9,000 HMRC staff will be moved from Benton to this new Grade A office complex here on Pilgrim Street. So what they did with Carlisle House, rather than demolish a whole Grade 2 listed building, they've left the facade and only demolished the interior construction. It's now of course supported by scaffolding on the outside. And what they plan to do when the time is ready, they will incorporate brand new Grade A office space inside the facade. So when it's all finished, it'll look like this beautiful old building from the 1920s from the outside, but on the inside it'll be brand new office space. And that's kind of what the idea is. This proposal is from Marian and her colleagues to do with Leazes Terrace, to demolish the interior, somehow move the outer facades into Leazes Park and rebuild the whole thing. And here behind me, this old building from 1838, the old music hall on Nelson Street in Granger Town, right next to the Granger Market, where Charles Dickens actually came up a couple of times to do his readings. This is another example of how the facade, the old Georgian exterior, remains, but inside is none of the original building. Inside is a modern pub and restaurant. If you'd like to see more videos like this and be notified the moment I release the next one, make sure you hit the subscribe button. So this proposal that's currently being put together, I expect to be very, very professional, a full, in-depth, articulate and detailed business plan, if you like, to move Leazes Terrace. But with the heart of it being in protecting its integrity as a significant, important historical building, not just in Newcastle, but in the country as well. Because when capacity does increase, it is going to put at risk the environmental surrounds of Leazes Terrace. So moving it here into Leazes Park is going to give it some protection, but it's also going to help develop and sustain the longevity of Leazes Park as well, because there's probably going to be some extra funding to look after the park over the long term. It is, I should stress, independent of Newcastle United at the moment. This isn't a Newcastle United funded proposal. This is an independent group of important stakeholders. They're going to put a proposal together to move Leazes Terrace. Now, are there problems with this proposal when it's ready? Yes, two massive problems. One is the staggering amount of money it would cost to do everything that I've just described, to move Leazes Terrace, demolishing facades, put it in Leazes Park and then rebuild it again. I've got no idea how much that would cost, but probably in the billions. It would be staggering amount of money. Would the PIF be willing to do that? Yes, they've got 700 billion in the pot at the moment, but we only have a tiny fraction of that committed to help develop Newcastle United. That wouldn't be an investment, which is what the pot is, the Sovereign Wealth Fund. It's an investment portfolio. They would never ever recoup all that money. In fact, they would only ever recoup a tiny fraction, because all of that would be to put an extra 5,000 seats on the East Stand. It would be tiny in comparison to the costs. Also as well, the other significant problem is, what are English Heritage going to say about it? Because they have the final say with the Culture Secretary in the Houses of Parliament. This all might go to court. There'll be objections locally and nationally to do anything with Leazes Terrace, like move it or demolish it. That could end up in a lengthy and very costly court case. This proposal also doesn't include the other problem we have of St James's Terrace, currently owned by Cash Mumtaz, but also St James's Street, which runs off as an L shape All of that has to go in order to develop the East Stand. So will any significant expansion of St James's Park happen before the Euros 2028? At first glance you think, well, it's just over 4.5 years time. There's loads of time, but head on. We have Stack going to be built in Strawberry Place any time now. According to the Stack owner, that's not going to be open till February to April next year. It's there for 3 years. Then they're going to have to spend 2 or 3 months dismantling it. That's going to take you well into the spring of 2027. That leaves them only, even if they've got all the planning done in advance, 12 months to basically completely rebuild the Gallagher stand with a huge extension and everything that's going to be on behind it, ready for the Euros 2028. I don't know. I'm not involved in these projects, but you can see just by looking at it as a layperson, it seems extremely unlikely that's going to happen in time. So it's probably, I think, going to happen after 2028. So for what it's worth, if you're asking me my opinion, based on everything that I've researched and the people I speak to, and everything we know about expansion and the desires of the club and the factors involved that might hinder certain aspects of it, I think when it's finished, whenever that's going to be, I think we'll probably have a stadium capacity of around about 60 to 62,000. But if we can get it up to 65,000, even better. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give us a thumbs up. I've tried to separate the fact from the fiction. I'm not trying to say what is going to happen. Nobody does at the moment, not even the owners. But I'm trying to stress that those who are claiming particular figures are making it up in their own imagination. Don't take it as fact.